Welcome to the Actually I Can Female Entrepreneur podcast. I am your host, Kayleigh Greenacre, a business strategist, coach, TEDx speaker, author, and your go-to woman for all things business strategy. I am obsessed with supporting female entrepreneurs to grow unstoppable six and multi-six-figure businesses that they love, giving them the freedom and life that they desire. During this podcast, I'll be sharing with you everything that you need to become a successful female entrepreneur, from the mindset shifts to sales and marketing strategies, and how to become an iconic leader that people can't get enough of. It is my mission to help you stand out, attract your dream clients and customers, and sell out of your offers with ease whilst building the business and life of your dreams. Let's make this your reality, ladies. Hello, ladies, and welcome to another episode of Actually I Can, the Female Entrepreneur podcast. And in today's episode, I'm going to be diving into the lie you've been told about consistency. Now, I want to start this episode really thinking about the word consistency, because I feel that this has been overused to a point that is almost feeling meaningless. Now, it becomes one of those words, I think, that sounds responsible and mature, something that every single business owner is told that they must master. You know, be consistent, show up consistently, sell consistently, create consistently. And I think if things aren't working, the answer is usually the same. You just need to be more consistent. But what I have noticed is that many entrepreneurs are already consistent in the way that advice defines it. You know, they're posting regularly, they're sending the emails, they're launching, they're showing up, they're creating. And yet beneath that activity, there is instability. Momentum builds and then it drops. The confidence rises and then it wavers. And sales fluctuate in a way that feels really, really confusing for the individual. And the immediate assumption is that the problem must be the effort, that more discipline and more frequency will fix it. But I honestly don't believe that this is true whatsoever. I think it's a massive, massive lie. And I think most entrepreneurs have been taught a shallow version of consistency and shallow definitions, creating this kind of really fragile foundations of a business. So today I want to unpack what consistency actually is psychologically and strategically, and why misunderstanding it is one of the reasons so many capable entrepreneurs feel exhausted despite doing all the right things. Right, let's dive into this. So let's start off by talking about consistency, not frequency. Okay, when people talk about consistency online, they almost always mean frequency. They mean posting daily, emailing weekly, launching quarterly, showing up no matter what. And whilst rhythm, absolutely, it does play a role in your growth, your frequency alone does not create stability, but it does create emotion. So you can be in motion constantly and still feel internally unsettled. You can publish every day and still question your positioning. You can appear visible and still feel invisible. So what I see far more often than inconsistency of action is inconsistency of identity. Women or female entrepreneurs who are technically present, but internally they are uncertain. Women who are disciplined about output, but unclear about their stance. Women or entrepreneurs who are showing up publicly whilst kind of quietly in the background, they're rewriting their message in their heads every time something underperforms. Now, that kind of tension is exhausting because it creates a split between basically your behavior and belief. So if you want to examine this, what I'm going to suggest to you is this. Consider in the last few months, have there been times where you've maintained your posting schedule, but internally doubted what you were saying? Times where you might have adjusted your messaging based on your performance rather than the actual conviction, and where you might have softened your tone because something didn't land the way that you hoped. Now, those moments are far more important than how often you posted. So rather than asking yourself, am I consistent enough? Honestly, ask yourself this: is my identity steady underneath my output? Because if your identity is unstable, increasing the frequency will only magnify that instability. So I really, really hope that makes sense. But honestly, it drives me mad that so many people are always talking about consistency. But actually, if we have something that's unstable underneath in terms of the identity, that's the bit that we need to work on first before we even look at posting consistently. So that's one of my first pieces of advice to really, really look at. So the next thing I want to dive into is emotional consistency and your nervous system, right? Really, really important. Now, there is a layer of consistency that very few people talk about, and it does sit beneath tactics entirely. It's emotional consistency. Now, emotional consistency is not about suppressing doubt or pretending to be confident at all times. It really isn't. It's about whether your emotional state dictates your strategic decisions. So when engagement dips, do you immediately question your positioning? If your launch, for example, if you go into a launch and it feels a little bit slower, are you worrying? Are you kind of stepping back a little bit and not continuing to show up in a way that feels really powerful? When something performs well, do you suddenly then amplify that angle, even if it wasn't central to the messaging before? Now, if your internal state swings dramatically with external feedback, your business will mirror that swing. And it's really, really important to identify that. And this is why some female entrepreneurs experience this kind of erratic income, even when their strategy is really, really good, right? Their nervous system is reactive, and reactivity reshapes messaging in kind of really subtle ways. It can change the tone, it can change the clarity. It sometimes even changes that certainty. And audiences are incredibly sensitive to certainty. People are drawn to steadiness, right? When we see people and we're consuming other people's content, we are drawn to the steadiness. We don't want the ups and downs of the roller coaster. It's that steadiness. They want to feel that the person they're invested in is anchored and not constantly recalibrating based on validation. They don't want that. So here is something for you to think about. How do you respond emotionally when something doesn't perform? Do you sit with it and validate it or evaluate it calmly? Or do you immediately reinterpret it as a sign that you need to pivot or change or tweak something? Now, the work here is not about forcing any emotional control, okay? It is about building self-trust that is not dependent on immediate feedback. That kind of steadiness builds authority in a way that no content calendar will ever be able to do. So it's something to think about. Really ask yourself those questions and think about how you can control that. So next, let's look at identity consistency versus surface level. This is honestly a really, really interesting topic and a kind of angle to look at consistency. Now, another misconception is that consistency is static, right? The same colors, the same tone, same posting rhythm. And whilst brand coherence is helpful, it really is. I mean, absolutely, believe me when I say this, because my colors are very consistent, but it's not actually what creates the recognition. It's identity consistency that creates the recognition, okay? And that is what people will be attracted to. Yes, they might love your colors and your branding. You know, loads of people comment on my branding all the time and my photo shoots and my colors and all sorts. But it is the identity consistency that really does build that kind of connection and attraction through magnetism. So identity consistency basically means that your core beliefs remain visible and stable even as your offers evolve. It means that your audience can articulate what you stand for really, really clearly. And it means your perspective deepens rather than pivots. Okay. So if someone has followed you for 6 months, they should be able to say without hesitation what you believe about your industry, not just what you sell, what you actually stand for. This comes back to the iconic leader. You want to become the iconic leader in your industry. And in order to do that, you have to openly share your values, your beliefs, your opinions, your goals. Now, it's really, really important that we lean into this and get the clarity. Now, one powerful exercise here is to define 3 core beliefs that underpin your work. Okay, just choose 3. I don't want them to be topics. I want them to be beliefs. Then review your recent content and ask yourself whether those beliefs are being reinforced repeatedly or whether you are spreading your message so widely that actually nothing really anchors and it doesn't really make loads of sense linking to your values and your beliefs. Okay. Recognition really does compound when belief is repeated. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that your beliefs are being repeated again and again and again. That will really, really support you and help you so that people can learn from you, but they can also see who you are as an individual and see what you stand for and what those beliefs actually mean to you. That is how you're going to be seen as the iconic leader. So people choose to work with you. And this is all rooted in the consistency. It's not consistency of posting every single day, for frequency purposes. It's all about you standing out and leaning into those beliefs. That is key. Really, really important. Okay, so another thing I want to talk about when it comes to consistency is discipline. Oh my goodness. So discipline is often framed as the solution to inconsistency, okay? But discipline without any clarity is simply pressure that you are applying to yourself. Now, you could be extremely disciplined about showing up while still feeling really, really misaligned. You can be highly focused on, structure, but you might be lacking the conviction, the confidence around it. You can be relentless in habits whilst potentially you're questioning your positioning as an iconic leader. Now, this is where, and I hate to say it, but this is where burnout can start to begin because people feel disconnected from their identity. And this can really, really stop allowing people to kind of lean in. So aligned discipline is what we want. We want it to feel purposeful, and we want it to reinforce something that you believe in. But misaligned discipline, where we're just pushing ourselves for the sake of it, can really exhaust us. And we don't want that. We don't want us to be doubting ourselves and to be exhausted and to potentially head towards that burnout. That's not what we want. So if you feel tired, despite being consistent, the question potentially that you need to look at is, are you anchored in that? Where are you putting your efforts in your business without reinforcing belief? Where are you maintaining habits that actually no longer serve you and your positioning? Where are you pushing instead of actually refining that clarity? Identify those and really work on them. See where potentially you're putting this energy and this effort and things are potentially not aligned or not feeling good to you. That's the sign. Because we can push and push and push ourselves every single day. But if we're not seeing the results, if it doesn't feel right, then what is the point of that discipline? If you're not allowing yourself to really connect with your own vision, your values, your beliefs. So it's really, really important to identify, are you pushing something that you were potentially told to do, but actually it doesn't feel aligned to you? And what could you change about that? So that is all about discipline. And the final thing I want to talk about today is real consistency and practice. So real consistency is quieter than most people expect, right? It is not about constant activity. It's about stable, focused standards. It is the consistency of belief that does not fluctuate with metrics. It's the consistency of your messaging that actually deepens rather than pivoting every 5 minutes off to something else. It is consistency of selling that comes from conviction rather than the urgency. And it's the consistency of decision making that reflects long-term vision rather than short-term emotion. So from a sales perspective, this is where stability is born. Predictable revenue does not come from posting more. It doesn't. It actually comes from anchored positioning repeated over time. So like I was saying earlier, repeating again and again and again and again and again, your vision, your values, your beliefs, your opinions, the 3 things, the 3 beliefs. Repeat them. When your audience experiences you as steady, clear, confident, and self-assured, trust will honestly build, right? And trust, as we know, will convert. People want to be able to trust you. And obviously we're in a climate right now where, people are not trusting a lot of people. There's a lot of people that are BSing their way to the top, but it isn't helping. People are savvy.
They're trust savvy. They're looking for people that they can trust. So instead of measuring consistency by how often you show up, I want you to begin measuring it by how often you abandon yourself. How often do you actually lower your standards when something feels uncomfortable? How often do you rewrite your thinking because something didn't perform instantly? How often do you dilute your stance to feel safer? Real consistency is the ability to stay anchored in who you are whilst the environment fluctuates. And that is what compounds. And that is what will make you the sales. Now, I really, really hope that this episode has supported and helped you around this topic of consistency. I felt like this had to be said. If this conversation resonated and you know you're ready to become an iconic leader in your industry who sells and repeat, then this is exactly the work we go deeper into inside Unstoppable and Iconic the Mastermind within the Iconic Era movement. And if you're not sure which space is right for you, or you simply want to explore what stepping into this next level could look like, then send me a DM on Instagram with the word iconic and let's have a conversation about how I can support you. Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode. Please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. And I will see you all again next time. Take care.
Thank you for tuning in to the Actually I Can Female Entrepreneur Podcast with me, your host, Kayleigh Greenacre. If you are ready to build, grow, and scale your dream six-figure or multi-six-figure business, then head to our website now for more information or connect with me on socials to see how you can create your dream business and dream life.